Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Starship Down, which is episode 7 of season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, one episode at a time. In this video I cover the 4th season episode Starship Down. So Starship Down is the episode in which the Defiant is out negotiating a trade deal with the Karemma when the Jem'hadar attack the Karemma and the Defiant get dragged into a fight that takes place in a gas giant, and they get disabled, the bridge gets destroyed, and Sisko gets injured, and Kira has to look after Sisko while Worf goes to engineering to take command of the ship. However, he has to deal with engineers who aren't used to dealing with his command style, and Bashir and Dax get trapped in a corridor that was flooded with gas, and they have to struggle to survive. And then a torpedo hits the side of the Defiant but doesn't go off, and Quark and the visiting Karemma have to struggle to defuse the bomb, which they eventually do. And then Worf, eventually working with Orion, gets the Defiant to destroy the other Jem'hadar ships, and the situation saves. And of course Sisko is much better, and he has a better appreciation for Kira. So So this is another personal milestone for me. I talked before in Voyager about how I stopped recording every episode off the TV because when it first aired, starting with ironically, the season 5 TNG episode Disaster, I started recording every single episode of Star Trek as it came out, and on VHS, and watching it over and over again. And this is where I stopped for Deep Space Nine. Voyager was a few episodes back, but this is the last one. Well, not actually the last one, because I did stop here, but then I later recorded the two-parter Homefront and Paradise Lost at the end of this VHS. So I think it was 2 episodes in between, like Little Green Men and Sword of Kahless, I believe, or no, there's 3. There was also the Bashir one. Was it Arme and Bashir? So 3 episodes that I missed, and then I went back and recorded the 2-parter, but then after that I stopped and didn't record anymore at all. And I already did my review for the 2-parter Homefront Paradise Lost, so I'm mentioning it here since I've already done that review, that this is where I stopped. So other than that 2-parter, from now on, all the episodes I cover I wouldn't have seen, I'm not as familiar with going forward. Although there's a caveat to that, because the final arc of this show, the last 10 episodes of season 7, I did record that on VHS when that came out, but that's different. But so everything in between though, I'm a little bit less familiar with. But anyway, so I was just reading that this episode was written by, well, it was a writing team. One was David Mack, who was on the team, and I recognize his name because he wrote a couple of Star Trek novels that I read. As always, I'm actually surprised with how many novelists actually wrote episodes for the show. This is the 3rd one that I can think of. There's might be more, actually. So apparently the inspiration for this episode was the movie Das Boot, which is a very popular movie. I remember I saw it not that long, well, about a decade or 2 ago. I saw it, and I don't know wasn't super impressed with it, I will say. I thought it was kind of boring. But anyway, they also talked that the original idea was to have the Defiant go underwater and to have water sort of seeping in the ship, and it would be like a Poseidon adventure type episode. However, that was prohibitively expensive, so they did a gas giant instead, and they felt that gas pouring through the corridors and them having to close a hatch to stop the gas from getting in was not as dramatic, or didn't have the same effect to the audience than it would if it was water. But hey, you work with what you get. I think it was effective to me. Now, I will say, I feel like, because I mentioned the episode Disaster, and I said it was ironic because this episode is kind of like Disaster. It's like another version of it, but instead of like just a space earthquake, it's a fight, a ship battle in which it happens. And they do try to make it. I would make comparisons to like Star Trek 2 or Balance of Terror, that kind of. By Star Trek 2, I specifically mean the fight at the Mataria Nebula at the end of the movie. But like that, or Balance of Terror, that sort of submarine-esque fighting thing. However, that's really just the first half of the episode, or not even half, more like the first third. Which I did like that aspect of it. I liked the whole Defiant sort of running from the Jem'hadar and the cat and mouse thing and playing the gas giant. But when we got into the disaster portion of the episode, and that is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, it's like not only the episode Disaster, but like pretty much any disaster movie, like they mentioned Poseidon Adventure, which I've never seen. I never even heard of it until the remake came out, if I'm being completely honest. But that kind of feel where there's different groups of people trapped in different parts of the ship, and they have to, cope with being stuck in disaster. Now, the episode Disaster, where Picard was stuck in the turbolift with 3 kids, and Troy was on the bridge with Rowan O'Brien trying to figure out how to save the ship, and Riker had to take Data's head off and go through the Jeffries tubes, like that, and then Geordi and Crusher were in the cargo base, so that kind of thing. So they did that here with the different groups, with Sisko injured on the bridge and Kira trying to look after him, Worf taking command of the engineering and not really knowing how to work with the engineers, and Quark being stuck in the mess hall with the torpedo about to explode, and Bashir and Dax being caught in there, that corridor by the gas or whatever. I didn't like the episode, that portion of the episode. This is when the episode lost me. Not because I don't like the disaster format. I'm actually fine with the disaster format. I just had a problem with every single one of those storylines. I didn't think any of them were particularly interesting, and I had issues with them. But before I get into those, I should start with my issue with the overall premise of the episode, and that is the Karemma becoming under attack from the Jem'hadar. So I was thinking the whole time I was watching this episode just last time, like, so what's to stop the Jem'hadar from just going to the Karemma homeworld and just killing them all, or reconquering the homeworld, or punishing their people for what these people are doing? And are they okay with them having trade relations with Ferengi and Starfleet? Like, and if not, then aren't they aware that they have trade relations? Like, none of this made any sense to me. I suppose, like, I was thinking about it, and maybe they're trying to say that because these Jem'hadar ships that caught them were destroyed, that the rest of the Jem'hadar and the rest of the Dominion never found out about what the Karemma was doing. But I don't know. That's like how we've seen that Dominion technology is superior. How is it that they couldn't communicate with the other Dominion vessels or anyone in Dominion before being destroyed? Is a hard pill to swallow. And the other thing is that, it's been well established that the Karemma have a trade agreement with the Ferengi. In fact, in the episode The Search, the Sisko's implied that if they lost their trade agreement with the Ferengi, this would upset the Founders. But now they're saying that the trade agreement, since the Ferengi working with Starfleet, the trade agreement existing would upset the Founders. Well, which is it? Is it cutting it off would upset the Founders, or having it in the first place would upset the Founders? And I personally think having it in the first place upsetting the Founders doesn't make any freaking sense, because how could they not know this? They've had it since that episode with those red people with red faces who threw shit around and said they were serious about profit. Like, ever since that season 2 episode. Like, how could they not know this? But anyway, that gripe aside, since I'm on the subject of the Karemma, they're completely inconsistent in this episode with how they were portrayed in The Search. And now, granted, it was a very brief scene. We got John Fleck being like a dick and saying, "Oh, let me buy this." And in this episode, where they got James Cromwell, which, good to see him, I guess. I think that, this is before he played Zefram Cochrane. But so they have him playing the Karemma, and he is in a dispute with Quark because Quark tried to rip him off, and he's talking about how the Karemma play by the rules, and they have a strict, everything's assigned a strict value, and they hate haggling, and they don't like cheating people, and they're very honest. This is not at all how they were portrayed in The Search. In The Search, he was a slimy guy who was just as slimy as Quark. They seemed very profit-driven, just like the Ferengi. Like, he was constantly trying to buy things. He was trying to buy Kira's earring, and Quark is like trying to sell it to him. And they're like, "Quark, it's like not yours." He's like, nothing. So he was more like a Ferengi. He did seem very profit-driven. He'd seem very slimy, very dishonest. And now all of a sudden, the Karemma are like the pillars of honesty and never, cheat anyone ever. Which, I'm thinking of, so the Karemma do appear again all the way in Lower Decks, the DS9 episode of Lower Decks, and the Karemma are portrayed a little bit more like they were in The Search, as kind of slimy or whatever, and I think that's better. And I think that's the way they should have been portrayed. I think the problem of portraying them this, I'm all about honesty, is not good. And they shouldn't have done that at all. But, that wasn't the only thing I disliked about the Karemma storyline. It's not just, it's inconsistent. I didn't find it interesting. Like, the fact that he was, saying, "Oh, Quark, you cheated me," and then Quark the whole time just being kind of pathetic and not funny at all when he's like, "Oh, I guess you sold me a thing or two about doing business in the Delta Quadrant." Like, he's trying really hard to win him over, and it was just not interesting. And then the whole thing about trying to disarm the torpedo is like, it's like gambling. And then it's supposed to get him into gambling at the end of the episode. He's playing Dabo and betting it all. It's like, this is thrilling. And even after they disarmed the missile, Quark is like, since that was so thrilling, maybe you'll take a risk and trust me after I tried to cheat you and proved I'm untrustworthy. I'm sorry. That was stupid. I did not care for that. So, other than that, we got the storyline with Sisko injured on the bridge and Kira looking after him. So first of all, I'll just say this. That this is, I believe, the first episode that establishes that Worf is the first officer on the Defiant. I hate this, and I'm actually glad that they later nixed this thing, because Kira's supposed to be the first officer, period, point blank. Not, well, if they're on the station, she's the first officer. If they're on the Defiant, then Worf's the first officer. Like, that's... No, that's confusing. I don't like it. Now, I know other people complain later on after they correct this, when Kira takes command of Defiant, they're like, well, wait a second. She's not in Starfleet. She's just a Bajoran officer. This doesn't make any sense. But, okay, a couple things about this. First of all, they've already shown her do this in Season 3, and I'm perfectly fine with that there. Secondly, she's the damn first officer of the show. So I don't give a shit. Oh, she's not in Starfleet. Who cares? She is the first officer. She needs to be the first officer. Period. Point blank. End of story. This whole sharing first officer duties. It reminds me of like Nana Visitor was talking about when Michael Dorn first got hired, that she was kind of scared for her job, that he would come and take over the first officer position, and that partially did happen, like in episodes like this. And then later on, there's an episode where they're like, Kira's like, oh, I'm the first officer, and I say we do this. And Worf's like, well, I command a Defiant, and I'm going to use the Defiant to do that against her orders. And there was like an impasse. There should be no... He's that bullshit with, I command a Defiant. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. So I'm glad that later seasons would eventually just ignore this and say that Kira is just flat out the first officer, end of story. Doesn't matter that it's a Starfleet ship and she's not in Starfleet. She's the goddamn first officer. I mean, if you want to go that route of, oh, well, she's not in Starfleet, then she shouldn't be serving on the Defiant, period. But no, she is. And if she's going to be on the Defiant, then she's the fucking first officer. Anyway, that's where I stand on it. But anyway, so regardless of that, we get the storyline with Sisko injured and Kira looking after him. So I have several issues with this storyline. Yet again, more issues. I mean, first of all, it's boring. I don't think it's particularly interesting. But secondly... Alright, so there's actually a couple things. So secondly, this pushes the whole mythology of the emissary being like a Jesus type figure even more. I talked about how the episode Destiny kind of made this up, because that was never the case. It was very clear from the first episode that emissary was just meant to be... describe the title of the person who discovered the wormhole. That's it. Not someone who was in the Bajoran Bible or deep in their mythology, who was a deep religious figure. They are a figure in so much that finding the wormhole is a religious figure, not in so much that they're in like all this mythology and do journeys and people have shrines to them. In this episode, Kira talks about like having shrines to the emissary, or a specific day of worship. I think she even said there's a holiday about the emissary. Like, no. This was never the case. And so they're just making shit up. And then, of course, the show later on will go with this and go with this version of the emissary, which I was never actually happy with, that they did go with this version. However, the bigger issue with this storyline is that they say that Kira and Sisko keep each other at arm's length. And Kira confesses that's because he's such a religious figure and it's hard for her to compensate or accept the fact that her commanding officer is just such a renowned religious figure in her faith. Again, this is made up. This was never the case before, especially in the first 2 seasons. She did not revere Sisko as a religious figure. That's for damn sure. She didn't even like him that much in the first season. So this is not true. But more to the point, the bigger transgression is that they've actually been been shown to be quite close with each other. Like, I've noticed this. Like, I pointed it out in certain episodes, like Way of the Warrior or Adversary, or certain season 3 episodes. I've been noticing here and there how well they mesh, and how they're a good team, and how they finish each other's sentences, and how they're always looking out for each other. And they even say, hey, you're going to get something to drink later on, and it's like, oh yeah, no, I am. And there were specific cases, like I think Way of the Warrior, Kira's like, oh, you want to grab something at the Replomat, and Sisko's like, no, I got a date with Cassidy. And he's like, oh yeah, how's Cassidy doing? Like, very familiar, making it very clear that they have a relationship outside of work. Contrary to what this episode says, where Kira's like, what do we normally talk about? And Sisko's like, we talk about work. Not true. Not just the Way of the Warrior, but plenty of other examples where they're like having dinner together with the whole crew, whatever, or like getting together after hours. And this whole bullshit about Kira's like, oh, he's a religious figure. No. This was clearly not the case, and never the case. So this whole storyline was a wash to me. And how, I didn't find it cute how they went to the holodeck to watch baseball, and Sisko tossed her the hat later on. Like, that was all well and good and cute, but it's bullshit. It's inconsistent with how they've been shown, because they have been shown to be very close, have a very close-knit first officer captain relationship, just like any other captain first officer team. Like, maybe not as strong as Kirk and Spock, but Riker and Picard, or Chakotay and Janeway, sure, absolutely. Even Riker and Picard, I would say their relationship was shown to be just as close. So this storyline is nonsense. And then the storyline with Worf in engineering, this is also nonsense. I'm sorry. We're introduced to Munez, who I would appear in, I believe, 2 other episodes after this. Second of which he would get killed. But so yeah, this whole storyline with Worf, treating the engineers like shit, and Chief O'Brien saying, oh, you need to cut him some slack. So it has, like, it's another example where it has the characters act out of character in order to tell the story that they want to tell. Because it has Worf, like, being a dick to the junior officers, when he's like, okay, I'll do my best. He's like, I would expect nothing less. This is completely out of character from what we've seen of Worf, especially since we've seen him in 7 seasons of TNG. I was watching a review where they correctly pointed out that the way that he behaved with Ensign Cito from the episode Lower Decks was very different. He didn't bark orders at her and treat her like shit. He was actually knew how to treat officers under his command in Starfleet, because he was, used to working in Starfleet vessels. He knows how to treat, those under the command. And I think, what they were trying to say is like, oh, these are engineers, so they're not used to the command style of being on the bridge. But that's nonsense. Like, even if that's the case, like, Worf would not be barking orders of them like that and being a total dick. It was out of character for him, point blank, and they did it just so they could have a storyline about this, which was a dumb storyline. I'm sorry, but I didn't really care for the whole, oh, you gotta learn how to let the engineers do their thing. And also, for that matter, like, we have seen a couple episodes where the bridge crew has to take over engineering, where they have to transfer command to engineering. And when that happens, the bridge officers come to engineering and they take command. So why are these engineers operating like the bridge, consoles like that they put like to operate the con and weapons and stuff like that, where they should be continuing to do engineer things, and they should have bridge officers there doing the stuff like the con and the bridge things. Like, that's how it usually works. But again, the reason why they didn't do it this way is because so they could do this stupid plot with the engineers, they gotta cut some slack, and it's lost me. It totally lost me, because this is when I had the second half of them looking for the Jem'hadar ship, and I was just not interested in this whole goofy engineer storyline. So that just leaves the storyline with Bashir and Dax, and this was probably my favorite storyline of them, of all these separate storylines. It's, at the very least, it's the one I have the least issues with, because I think there was some good character interaction between Bashir and Dax. Like, I like how we kind of get the revelation that Dax kind of liked sort of egging Bashir on, the fact that he was used to always like flirt with her heart out. And also, like, they established very clearly that he's not pursuing her anymore. So I think this was kind of a necessary episode, or a necessary storyline to have, to sort of resolve that storyline in the first two seasons of Bashir. Like, I pointed out, there were a couple episodes where he was like bordering on sexual harassment. Like, he was like really pushing really, really hard. And she even says in this episode, to be fair, it's like, you came on so strong. Now, the truth of the matter is that they had originally written Dax to be like this sort of asexual, aromantic character who was not interested in, that sort of thing, and trills or beyond that sort of thing, and so they're just not looking for a romance. However, they totally changed that in season 2 when she went on spring break and became looking for romance, and sex became a huge part of her character. So they had to reconcile with that, and so they came up with this, which I think was good. I think there was good interaction between the two. As I said, I like the chemistry between Bashir and Dax. I almost wish that they did put them together later on, but I guess it would be awkward considering how it started out. But I thought this was, I thought it was a nice little storyline. However, the thing about it is that nothing happens. Like, nothing really happens. Dax is dying because he's choking on gas, and Bashir risks his life to save her, and they get trapped in a room where the oxygen's dissipating, and they just have to sit there and wait for someone to rescue them. There is no storyline. Like, compare it to Disaster, the episode in which Geordi and Crusher got trapped in the cargo bay, and they were going to suffocate, and so they had to, or the fire was going to go up, so they had to, like, do this whole thing where they had to open the space doors and to put out the fire, but doing so would make them suffocate and lose consciousness, so they had to like plan and do this whole thing. So they were actively doing something to survive, whereas in this storyline, they're just sitting in a room waiting to be rescued. Nothing really happens in this story. As I said, there were some good character interactions, which is why it's probably my favorite of the ones, because I don't have, a lot of issues with it like I do with the other ones. But it's not much to it. Just like this episode, there's just not much to the episode overall. Now, I will say they had the first half of the episode where, the ship was having to play cat and mouse with the Jem'hadar ships was kind of suspenseful, but it wasn't the best thing ever. And it's not like it doesn't make up for how bad the rest of the storylines are. And I will say it had this ensign who was operating the con, which why wasn't Dax operating the con? We've seen her do that in the past. It's because that's what the script required. But yeah, other than that, yeah, didn't think this episode worked. Like, it's not only is it like the episode Disaster, and of course Disaster is much better. Not that Disaster was a masterpiece in its own, but if you look at DS9, there's the episode Civil Defense, which also kind of sort of took the Disaster format. However, that less so because there was less storylines. It was basically just the three. There was Quark and Odo trapped in security. There was Sisko, Jake, and O'Brien who were trapped in ore processing, and then everyone else is on the bridge. So it was like three storylines. But it's a far superior episode. Far superior in like every way. And it was more suspenseful, more interesting. The character interactions were better. Didn't have all these plot holes that this episode does. It's just superior episode in every way. So I would now like to thank all my Patreon supporters who support me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with the channel. I'd like to give a big special thanks to Jordan Johnson and Brandon Nealhouse. Thank you both so very, very much for your strong support. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Maddie Jester, Joel Valls, Alessandro Miguelucio, Norman Buchwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So we do have a few patron comments on this episode. First comment is from Antarius, who says, "This is an unusual DS9 episode. It feels more like a Voyager TNG script. The episode starts strong and exciting, but in my opinion soon gets weaker. We see a lot of concepts that I have seen better executed. The fight without working sensors, the Wrath of Khan, the crew split on a malfunctioning ship, TNG Disaster, Worf learning to command, Voyager learning curve. The Jem'hadar were introduced as a very strong enemy capable of destroying a galaxy starship, but here they are destroyed by a single shot or torpedo once they were located. There are some nice character scenes, so I will give it a weak 7 out of 10. So yes, there was not really the Jem'hadar ships were very easy to destroy, but I've noticed like they tend to be when the plot requires it. So that's how hard or easy a ship is to destroy. It always is depending on what is required of the plot. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, "I think it is an okay episode. It's nowhere near as good as Disaster from TNG or especially amazing top tier episode like Damage or Year of Hell. But it's okay. It starts off exciting and is considerably weaker and weaker as the episode goes on. The Sisko and Kira scenes were okay. The scene with Bashir and Jadzia were okay. The scenes with Quark and the bomb were also okay. Oh, Strange New Worlds Gorn episode was way better than this too. So yeah, not much to say, but that's an okay episode. So my rating is a 6 out of 10. I did like the Strange New Worlds Gorn episode. I do think it's a little bit overrated. Some people are saying it's the best episode of season 1, but that was clearly the finale, Quality of Mercy. But I also thought it was a good episode. I thought it was better than this, quite frankly. I don't know if it really had that disaster feel to it. I mean, kind of, sort of. There were, I believe there were a couple people trapped in different parts of the ships at some stage. So maybe there was that disaster. I don't know. I'd only seen it once, and it's been a while. So maybe there was a disaster room. But I remember it feeling different than... It was more focused on the one storyline about the cat and mouse with the Gorn ship. And, yeah. Sorry, it was far superior to this one. In fact, I think when I reviewed that episode, I even brought up Starship Down. I was like, hey, this episode's kind of like Starship. Yeah, that's right, because other people were comparing it to like Balance of Terror and like Disaster or something. And I was like, no, this is actually like Starship Down. That's actually the closest comparison. So, yeah, I do remember saying that. So, yeah, I guess it is like that, but yeah, the Strange New Worlds one was far superior. Anyway, next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says, I was super excited for this episode when I first saw the trailer, but it was kind of a disappointment, especially since the Jem'hadar are never shown, just their ship. I think the Sisko and Kira stuff was the most interesting to me, but overall, I think their relationship had a lot more potential than the show explored. Working for a religious icon in a non-religious setting could have been explored a lot more. I think this episode and Destiny are about the only ones to really touch it. Kira and Sisko don't put together a lot, don't get together a lot, especially in the later seasons. James Cromwell is also always good, but the Quark storyline was the most annoying of the episode. That'll do, Quark. That'll do. So, yeah, the reason why the Kira and Sisko never touched on them being religious figures because it just fucking made it up in Destiny, and they made it worse in this episode. Now, whether they touch on that going forward, I seem to remember that they did, kind of, sort of. But, you know, if they didn't, it's probably because they shouldn't, because it's a retcon that they should ignore. But I do think the relationship is close, though. I don't know. I'll have to pay attention to the show going forward to see just how close they are, because I do think they are shown being kind of close. They are being shown close before this episode, regardless of what the episode tries to tell you. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, if Worf was raised on Kronos, this is what would have happened. When Ensign Carson gave Worf the latest weapons drill test, when Munez changed the configuration on the helm controls, when Captain Sisko is badly injured with a concussion, when O'Brien gives him some advice, Worf kills Carson with his bat'leth for unacceptable results, kills Sisko because it's no way to die, kills Munez for changing the layout as Worf can't read changes, kills O'Brien for questioning his orders. Back to reality, Worf is being an arsehole again. Someone should sue him for abusive behavior. So my rating is 7. I love the scenes with Quark and Honik and Strange New Worlds played the hide and seek. 2 out of 10. I'm sorry, but I never, bought that's how Klingon ships function. I know they mentioned it before, and they had, Kern be like, oh, if you question my orders, I would have killed you if this was a Klingon ship. I don't see how Klingon ships can actually function like that. I think there were Starfleet officers who did point this out, who were like, how can a ship function? And Worf's like, oh, they find a way, it works for them. No, bull. I'm sorry. That's bull. I don't buy it. Especially, if Worf killed Munez just for, doing the helm control wrong, then Klingon officers would be killed before they got anywhere. People need to make mistakes. That's part of learning. Why would he killing O'Brien for giving bad advice? I'm sorry, if Worf did any of this, he would be 100% out of character. Now, I know you said if he was raised on Kronos, because you are taking into account that he was raised on, Earth. But, Well, it was supposed to be Gold, but then they changed it to Earth. The Federation, in the Federation. But, even if it was a Klingon ship and there was a Klingon, especially if it was a Klingon raised in Kronos who is now serving in Starfleet, like, they can't just go around killing ensigns. That would not be acceptable. But if they were on a Klingon ship, then, again, I don't know how, like, it can't function that way. Like, I never bought that. I just still don't buy it. I don't care what the show tries to tell me. But, anyway, Worf is being an arsehole. I will agree with you there. Which is out of character. Totally out of character for him. Not that he's the nicest guy ever, but he's not just an arsehole for no reason. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, okay, I'm not getting notifications and I just assume you were taking a break in case I'm not too late. Which you're not. You're all good. Yes, this is a mix of disaster and balance of terror, and unfortunately is not as good as either episode. Yeah, like disaster, all our main characters are doing something during the dire situation, but it truly pales in comparison to Season 3 greats like Civil Defense and The Adversary. 100%. Plus, it throws in stuff I truly have trouble buying. Worf has had people working underneath him for years, and I doubt Ensign Sito would work with him as a member if he's anything like how Worf treats engineering team. Actually, no. So earlier in the review, I said there was a video I watched that mentioned Ensign Sito, but I think I'm mistaken. I think I read your comment before. So you're the one who mentioned Ensign Sito, and you're correct in doing so. It's very, very apt to point that out. Let's see, where am I? And yeah, Kira has been known to be religious, but out of nowhere she now totally buys in that her boss is the holy emissary figure. Outside of that, there are good character touches, with Quark's being the most interesting, and yeah, of course, Bashir will risk himself for Dax. But when I first saw it back in the day, I sighed and said, okay, yet another disaster episode again, and it was good, but not great. At least much, much better than one of the future ones known as One Little Ship. I give it a weak 7 hot dogs with Hasperat because Kira would at least demand compromise out of 10. Yeah, we're going to have to agree to disagree about Quark. I did not think that was interesting at all. I thought it was dumb. Especially that time when they both started laughing. Like, I didn't buy that. That was fake laughing. They were like, oh, and if we pull the wrong one, we die! Ha 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 ha! Like, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. That just seemed awkward. Like, I don't know. I just didn't like that whole thing. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So, my rating for Starship Down out of 10, it's actually going to be a 4. Poor. And I know I'm probably being too critical in this and going way lower than people expect. But honestly, like, as I'm doing this review, like, I can't in good conscience give it a positive rating because there's too much wrong with this episode and there's too much that bothers me about it, and there's not much that I like about it. Now, I did kind of like the cat and mouse thing, which I thought worked for the first part of the episode, but once they got into disaster mode, it's not that I have a problem with the disaster format, it's that each of the storylines are flawed and inconsistent with what came before it and not particularly interesting. Like, the best one is the Bashir and Dax one, and as I said, like, nothing happens in it. They just sit and wait to be rescued. So this did not accomplish what it was trying to accomplish. Just like Norman said, that it tries to be like Balance of Terror and Disaster and ends up being lesser episode than both of those. So I see that it's kind of failed at what it was trying to do, and I think that they should pay more attention to the episodes that came before and try to be more consistent. Like, if you're going to do a Sisko and Kira bonding episode, I would love to see that. But try to be consistent. Don't do this bullshit where she's suddenly thinking he's a holy emissary figure and pretending like they never hang out or talk to each other at all, which is not true. Like, we've seen that in other episodes. So yeah, and the whole Worf engineer talk to engineer things was contrived nonsense, and Quark thing was dumb, and yeah, so I'm sorry. It's not a terrible episode. Like, I definitely wouldn't put this in a conversation with like one of the worst of the show, which is why it gets a 4, not anything lower. But still, it's like there's just too many issues with it for me to give it a positive rating. So yeah, some people might say I'm being really harsh on this, but I actually never liked this episode that much. Like, I tried to convince myself to like it, just because it had the Jem'hadar in it, but when I started like doing my channel and being serious about analyzing episodes and you know, trying to be true to myself with how I really feel about it, it's I saw all the flaws with it and never thought it was that great of an episode. So 4 out of 10 for me. So that is it for my review of Starship Down. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you would really like to support the channel, you could possibly do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link below in the description. I have different rewards for different tiers, such as a series of Patreon-only videos that I do exclusively for Patreon supporters, where I revisit reviews that I've already done. And you can make comments, I'll read my videos, and I have pre-releases, that sort of thing you can check out if you are so inclined to do so. Let's see what's coming up on the channel. Monday will be my review for the Voyager episode Tattoo. Thursday I'll be reviewing episode 3 of season 3 of Strange New Worlds. And then on Saturday, reviewing the DS9 episode, A Little Green Men. So, that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Strange New Worlds and many other Star Trek videos and videos on other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.